Alright. I finally have time to do this. Before I do any of my dailies and Genshin and whatnot, I've decided I'm gonna do this since I've been wanting to do it for a while now but just haven't had time. Here's a new personality test Toryu's making me do. Last time he made me do one of these, it was for a sexual preference type thing. But now apparently it's for moral foundations. I decided not to look up about this. The less I know, the better. That's typically the case for personality quizzes like this. And also to take this with the mindset of not taking it too seriously. Let's go. I'm gonna record it. Moral Foundations Test by Jonathan Haidt. Six-dimensional psychology test. Inspired by the works. Care, fairness, liberty, in-group, purity, and authority. These are pretty vague, but I can make a guess as to what they mean, and they're hopefully correct. This is Toryu's results. I'm gonna guess in order of what I think I'll be most likely my stats will be. I believe liberty or maybe care would be number one, with the other one being number two. So care and liberty are gonna be one and two. I think fairness, authority, and in-group are not things that I value very much. So purity is guaranteed to be third, I guess. And any of these could be the last and at the bottom. The most likely one to be at the bottom, to me, I think would be authority. Purity actually might, because I don't really value people to act in accordance to natural things. I often prefer if people were to be weird and be honest, more honest about their impulses and their strength, because it's natural to be weird. Oh, 48 questions, 15 minutes. It is morally wrong to mistreat one's own body or live unhealthily. Alright, so this is about whether I think it's fine for you or for anyone to treat their body wrongly. And yeah, I very much agree with that. I mean, I hate smoking, after all. Men and women should have equal access to the same opportunities. Yes, I am a feminist, but I am also a masculinist. People are forgetting that men deserve rights too. It is not acceptable for a leader to negotiate with people you would personally consider terrorists, even if hundreds of lives are at stake. It is not acceptable for a leader to negotiate with people. I believe in exceptions. Only the Raiden Shogun doesn't believe in that. Even then, strongly agree would mean as long as they present a good case, then the leader should just be willing to negotiate. But dealing with terrorists is always going to be an iffy situation, you know. But if they can save lives and the costs and risks of doing it, it's like, I guess it's like when you work with the people in the Fatui to prevent the flood. prophecy thingy happening in Fontaine. I didn't agree with working with the father very much, but I understood they probably had no that was probably their best bet to get as much help outside as possible. I'm gonna say slightly agree. It is important for societies to preserve pride in their traditions and heritage. Uh, I understand and believe in traditions and heritage and stuff. I like that they exist and that people practice them, but I myself personally am against practicing such things. I mean, I hate things like New Year's, Christmas, and even my own birthday, matter of factly. So it's either agree or slightly agree. Practice your religion, practice your beliefs, practice your traditions and heritage. Just leave me the fuck out of it. Agree. It is wrong to treat someone differently based on their race, ethnicity, or caste. I wonder how many people would actually pick something that isn't agree. I mean, there's reason. There's a basis for this social behavior. Like in fiction, although fiction is an extreme example and not exactly real, imagine a fictional world where there's humans and there's demons, and demons are just inherently stronger and inherently their personality is much more savage than that of the weak-willed but intellectual humans. In that case, it would be wise to actually treat someone differently on that sense. And on a sense, even without such, like in real life, for example, uh, obviously you wouldn't treat a Japanese person the way you would treat you yourself as a non-Japanese person, theoretically speaking. Like let's say you're American or something. But me personally, I live by the belief that I treat everyone, and I mean everyone, plants and animals included, with equality. That does mean that yes, if you are like the spiders in my home, who are annoying and in the way, I definitely, if it were within my means, would not hesitate to murder you. For legal reasons, that is a joke. That statement is a joke. I haven't killed anyone. Yet. All people should have a right to reproduce, even those with serious inheritable diseases. I mean, I'm all for same sex marriage as well, so obviously, uh, my personal belief right now is a reason why I think it's morally correct to accept same sex marriage being legal is a matter of population growth, population control, and stuff. I'm all for true love and stuff, but just adopt a child if you want one. I don't fully disagree. If you really want to have children through natural, quote unquote, natural means, then ultimately there would be nothing I could do to stop you, and it would in fact be morally wrong, in my opinion, to try to stop someone because they're doing what they believe is right and you're doing what you believe is right, which unfortunately happens a lot in the real world. It's inevitable for views to clash, and as for me, I've chosen to be very passive with my beliefs and ethics. I'd rather defend someone trying to defend their own beliefs than try to defend my own beliefs. So, just slightly disagree, I guess. It is important for professional environments to uphold formality and diplomatic etiquette. I actually do agree, believe it or not, but stuff like this can also sometimes get in the way of professional workings. Uh, and sometimes etiquette and formality is actually used as a weapon, like with the nobility and all of their stupid rules as a way to just easily, uh, back in the day, use it as a weapon to just ignore people who aren't of status. Like, you aren't nobility, so you should. Although there's a chance this nobility and stuff like that isn't. I mean, it's entirely professional, which, in which case, yeah, that can. Because, like, here's the thing: if your client is just a bitch and they definitely won't uphold it, why should you uphold it as well? Respect, people say, is something you have to earn, but I believe more accurately, respect is something to be expected, something to be practiced. Because it's impossible to earn respect, it's only possible to lose it. So if you want someone to respect you, act like it right away. And if the other person isn't acting respectfully, then you shouldn't. That's my take on respect culture, I guess. So just slightly agree. You might think with what I just said that that should be a disagree, but like I said, etiquette is still good. Obviously, you should treat people in professional environments kindly. You want to be amicable in situations like those. I think that's just much more efficient, logically speaking, based on my current understanding of sociology and psychology and all that good stuff. Granted, I'm likely in the on the peak of Mount Stupid when it comes to that, but people should always strive to reciprocate any favor done for them later on, even when doing so is not expected. I don't like favors. I don't like promises either. If someone does something nice to you, uh, I will I will thank them, but I wouldn't try to return the favor. I'm not Otsu, and I don't believe in an eye for an eye. Because when you do this, the opposite is also expected. You know, if someone does bad to you, you should be expected to reciprocate and do bad to them too. Eye for an eye makes the world go blind. So I'm gonna say strongly disagree. Because reciprocating good deeds could result in a negative feedback loop that at most would last until the end of two people's friendship, and at worst could create a legacy, a lifetime of reciprocation that eventually the ancestors grow to hate. I think like a perfect example of this is Fruits Basket, where the story of the 12 zodiac people is taken literally as actually existing, and there are avatars of those zodiacs who still live and are expected to be friends because generations ago they made a promise to always be friends, even though, you know, they could have just died normally and not passed on such a stupid burden. And it's a good show. It is shameful to purchase something purely based on its luxury, status, or trendiness. Strongly disagree. I mean, I don't agree to mommy being such an impulsive buyer, but ethically speaking, that isn't technically a moral question. I mean, yeah, you wasted money, but that's not my problem anyway. As long as they find happiness in it, no matter how short it is, as long as they found it happy in the moment, then who am I to blame them? If they come to regret it, then that's their fault, and they should learn to be less compulsive. But I won't change anything about them. The worst sin I believe any person can commit is trying to change someone else's beliefs, unless they're just objectively wrong, like a flat earther or something. I don't know. Groups of people need hierarchy and established leaders to function cohesively. I very much don't agree with that. I don't believe a leader is necessary in a group. Councils are a thing, although that is just still a hierarchy where there's just multiple leaders instead of just one. But I'm a believer in the wisdom of the many, where everyone just decides rather than everyone decides and the one guy gets the final say. Sexual activity outside of monogamous romantic relationships should be heavily strongly disagree. If you want to marry more than one person, go polyamorous, go be gay, be lesbian, be fucking pansexual, call yourself she slash her even though you're biologically a guy, and vice versa. Go ahead. Reproduction, sexual life, and romance are all very separate things in my eyes. And romance is the greatest fiction men tell themselves. It is important for families to stick together and uphold unity even when its members do not get along. I'm more fond of stories of found family, although thankfully my family are mostly in good terms. But like I said with the previous question, with the reciprocation thingy in fruits basket, because family, I do believe, falls into this category a bit as well, where it is expected and that you should therefore be good to each other just because you guys share a bloodline. But the expectation is hard to uphold, although it's expected, encouraged, and I definitely agree that people should do it. It's just inevitable sometimes that even though you're of the same blood, you guys could just come to clash because of generational gaps or some other less likely thing to happen. A social rife with divinity, religion, and spirituality is preferable to an atheistic one. We're talking about religion now. Uh, I don't want to answer no opinion either way, but that is just genuinely the truth. Because religion I classify as belonging, as being part of culture, and I do believe there's merit in practicing and creating such things, but I want to be left out of it. I myself am agnostic. I believe that's the proper term for it. I don't believe in God, but I don't not believe in God either. And I practice, or at least study, a lot of religion. I guess that makes me a theologist. Uh, Inherently, the concept of spirituality is all about trying to achieve moral goodness. When when religious people forget that and they start bringing their beliefs outside of spirituality and moral goodness, like trying to put it into science, like trying to debate with origin of life researchers and stuff, that's when religion starts to become problematic. Because ultimately, uh, that kind of question doesn't matter when it comes to religion, I think. God can exist, God may exist, God may not exist, but that's no reason for you to argue with researchers who are, above all else, simply focused on discovering the truth. You know, I wish I could word it better, but right now words are escaping me based on regarding my thoughts on beliefs. Because ultimately, yeah, it's good to practice religion and spirituality as long as it's in the goal of achieving your bestest and kindest perceived self. But when you take it outside of that, then that's just no good. You shouldn't do that. Science should stay as science, and religion should stay as religion. Both are simply different ways of understanding and coping with living our temporary lives in this empty and worthless world. When raising a child, would be preferable for them to end up kind and lowly than successful but cold-hearted. It is never justifiable to invade and militarily occupy another country that has not harmed or threatened another. Providing negative feedback to peers should typically be done sparingly and politely to not offend with bluntness. You shouldn't offend people, but you should be honest as well. Just disagree, but not strongly disagree. You shouldn't be all like, fuck you, you're shit, you're trash, your work is trash. You should at least offer a modicum of politeness. Like, you should, rather than being that blunt about it, you could be more calm and reasonable. Alright, I hate to break it to you, I know you're gonna be mad at this, but your work fucking sucks. That's still kind of bad, but it's a lot better in my opinion. It's still honest, but it isn't defecating. Certain punishments are so cruel and violent that even the most evil and dangerous evil individuals do not deserve them. I actually watched a video recently about JoJo where it's like Diavolo did not deserve the infinite death loop. And honestly, yeah, I've never thought about how brutal the villains are reprimanded in JoJo. But yeah, some of them are over the top. Cars just wanted perfection, and he suffered eternal damnation in space. And Diavolo just selling drugs to kids. I mean, that's terrible. That's awful. But why would that deserve infinite death loops? Technically a fate worse than what Cars endured. And his crime is technically against not just the humanity, but Pillarman, his own kin. You know? And I don't believe in punishments anyway. Evil should not be met with evil, but with reprimand. A slap on the wrist. Tell them they did bad. Tell them what they did wrong and how they could do better, and to hopefully not do the bad thing again. I believe in an infinite amount of second chances. Excuse me, I'm gonna burp. Society should encourage children to be fully obedient to their parents and fair to their decisions until they reach maturity. I strongly disagree. Children should have autonomy the moment they're born. That is my opinion. I don't believe in authority. In what does Mooney call it from Moon Channel? Especially, he mentioned it a lot. The Confucianist society, which is what Korea and Japan and probably China too uses, where hierarchy is the most important above all. I mean, that's why there's honorifics in Japan, after all, in the Japanese language. It isn't the language that created it, but language reflected the demands of the people for hierarchical respect. But yeah, obviously a parent should defend their child to let them reach maturity, but they shouldn't control them. Just defend and make sure they don't end up being psychopaths or something. Obviously, in extreme cases. There is no end goal noble enough and no circumstances desperate enough to ever justify directly sacrificing the lives of unwilling innocents. Since I technically would most likely fall into the category of an unwilling innocent, should such a thing ever happen, I obviously strongly agree. I'm not a leader, which therefore makes me in this department. If I were a leader, I'm not sure how I would respond to this, but right now, it strongly agree. This is kind of like the opposite. This is kind of like a follow up to the previous question, it seems. Responsible citizens who are not members of the military or police force should have legal access to basic firearms for self-defense. I usually hate power scaling, but power scalers love saying this line, and I wholeheartedly agree. The best weapon and the best defense you can have isn't having weapons and superpowers. It's just not having enemies at all. And most of us, we don't have enemies. Most of us would get beaten to freaking pulp by even the weakest of shonen pro tags. You know? And we shouldn't strive for such power because power does not offer protection. Power offers more, and power offers targets. You become a bigger target. As your HP gets bigger, so too do the enemies as well. Tenfold even. Not with their own HP, but with their attack power. If I had to be a nerdy RPG gamer guy about it. So, I mean, obviously, we should still have weapons. Because when push comes to shove, it's inevitable that we should be able to do something to preserve our own lives. So, disagree. Those who have earned large amounts of wealth should be obligated to provide some of it towards public welfare and or less fortunate members of their society. I very much agree. I hate capitalism, and should I unlikely ever become rich and famous, I would definitely be doing my best. Not lazily by just contributing to charities, but by actively setting up things and using my funds to do stuff on my own rather than just delegating my money to someone else who promises they would do good with it, like charities or the government. Because I don't trust either. Pursuing the goal of raising a family and a career that helps achieve this goal is more noble than pursuing a child free life path. I have no opinion at either way. I've never thought of this before. Uh, I guess ultimately this boils down as a question about preserving uh, humanity, preserving life, which is a privilege and a rarity in the universe that is seemingly empty and desolate. And obviously that's, but right now, like I said, overpopulation is a bit of a problem, especially in the country that I live in. It's a negative feedback loop economy wise. Poor people don't know any better, so they just keep bearing children rather. And since there's more children, the population increases, and so to meet up with the increased demand, but the supply suffers, and therefore the price rises. So poor people make once again even more children to make up for that, and the cycle just repeats. It's a terrible cycle. So no, I don't believe it's noble to be selfless. Not fully though. Citizens should never be denied the right to non-violently assemble and protest in public spaces, even when it is likely to progress into rioting. If it's likely to progress into rioting and if it's in getting in the way of public uh, health and stuff, like if they're being annoying more than they are actually making proper, I slightly agree. Protesting is good, but don't be a dick about it. I mean, obviously, the point of protesting is being a dick, but be a dick to the correct people, please. Ensuring wrongdoers experience discipline through retributive punishment is an essential component of justice and ensuring the proper functioning of society. I already talked about this. No, an eye for an eye makes the world go blind. When a wrongdoer rather than when someone does something bad and they receive punishment for it, that's not going to make them less likely to do something bad once they're finally done with their punishment. They might just do it again if they find the correct circumstances. What will stop them from doing it again isn't punishing them, but teaching them that what they did is wrong and that they should be striving to act differently. Protecting the public's right to privacy from surveillance and espionage should be a greater priority than using said tools to catch terrorists or criminals. Oh, that's a big thing. There's a wisecrack video I watched once when it comes to privacy. People say they don't really care if they're being spied on because they have nothing to hide. You may not have anything to hide, but something something. I forgot what they said. Because privacy is important. People will abuse it, even if they aren't technically criminals. Let's be honest here. Companies, information sharing companies, are technically criminals. Just, just slightly. CCTVs are still important, but prevention is better than the cure, because that's what CCTVs and surveillance does. They're cures for something that was already too late. A CCTV doesn't prevent criminals. It only lets us see criminals. It doesn't stop them. When a crime is done, a CCTV will not help with that. It will only help us find the criminal, but by then it would already be too late. Goods would have already been stolen, lives would have already been lost, and the retribution of justice being upheld will never refill the hole in the heart of those who suffered from the injustice. Although taste in art, architecture, and style is technically subjective, it is important that a society tries to hold certain standards of beauty and sophistication. I don't fucking care about art. It is preferable for society to promote that people work through their mental health problems by talking about them openly rather than trying to hide and ignore them. Yes, it is important for nations to pursue. A healthy society requires healthy minds, not the perception of healthy minds. Its individuals have to be healthy rather than pretending to be healthy. It is important for nations to pursue a level of economic and military self-sufficiency to avoid dependency on others, even if it results in a lower standard of living. Why would having higher level of economic and military self-sufficiency result in lower standards of living? Higher economy should mean better standards of living, because the two go hand in hand. Same with the military. It means there's more protection. But then again, we live in a globalized world, and countries should just trade and share with each other, and rather than be afraid and be selfish. As much as I like individuality, like I said, wisdom of the wise, it's better to work together rather than try to live on islands, even though countries kind of figuratively and literally are islands. So, I disagree to an extent. Not fully, because self-sufficiency is still important. Because sometimes there's just moments where you can't rely on others, and you need to rely on yourself. But if you can rely on others, you should never turn let go of a helping hand. A world where everyone is willing to help each other rather than a world where everyone just lives within themselves is a better world in my opinion. Unfortunately, it's a hard world to achieve, but not impossible. And in fact, logically speaking, game theory wise, it is actually logical and encouraged to live by being kind rather than being mean. There's a video about it with Veritasium. I can't explain it all myself. I mean, I've already been here for way too long than what was supposed to be expected. After all, it is a sign of a deeply flawed society when someone can inherit a large sum of wealth or power without having to work for it themselves, while others inherit little to nothing. I agree. Having power and influence for basically just being born should be a crime. I mean, obviously, we want the reason noble people are rich people are rich. Although there are plenty of rich people who are selfish. There's also those who simply want their children to have to start off having better lives because they come from a poor person. You know, they have a rags to riches type story, and they don't want their children to live through that exact same story. But uh, that's just not very good. Ultimately, richness can still be a prison in it, a prison of suffering in it on itself. Although we like to make fun of it, it is obviously a reality that certain privileged people find the power and influence, the responsibility that comes with it, such as a prison, more so than it is a privilege. I obviously don't know how to deal with such a problem because I believe we exist in the world being described in this question, but unfortunately, I don't know what we can do about it. Capitalism isn't and shouldn't go away anytime soon, as it's an important part of society, much as I hate to admit it. All citizens charged with a crime, no matter how obviously guilty or problematic they are, should have the right to an impartial trial, fair representation, and due process. Thanks to Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney, I strongly agree with this. The truth matters above all else. Truth and fairness before justice. When a friend instigates a conflict with someone else, it is more important to support whoever is morally in the right than it is to support whoever you are personally close to. The primary goal of government should be to prioritize the interests of their country and those who currently live in it, rather than pursue the well-being of humanity at large. Agree, but not wholly. Because ultimately, if people focus on bettering themselves, then they would in turn benefit everyone else just by default and virtue of them just being already better and therefore being able to help should the need arise. But obviously, again, with the extreme, it shouldn't be too focused on just themselves and be an island. A society works best when most of its members. I know I'm treating countries as if they're just an individual person, but really scales like this are different and are just objectively different. But for the most part, I do believe this applies, and that's just my opinion. Even if there's a very high likelihood that it's wrong. A society works best when most of its members share similar values, beliefs, social norms, and mannerisms, with newcomers being accepted to assimilate/adopt these values before joining. This is once again talking about a Confucianist society, and I strongly disagree. A society works best when everyone when everyone has equal rights to the microphone, and can say their say. Almost done. If an external threat ever attempts to exploit one's homeland and its people, every citizen should be willing to stay behind and sacrifice their life to defend it if called upon. No. An individual has the right to defend their own life over defending someone else. Because ultimately, we were born in the country, born in this world without our will. We are not expected, and we shouldn't be expected to protect it. Just like how I'm not expected to like my mother, just because she's the one who gave birth to me. But I do love her. Because she's given plenty of reason for me to love her, other than just giving birth to me. Some people, because why would anyone be grateful for being born? You know, some people on the basis of their talent, risk taking, hard work, and contributions are more deserving of wealth than others. I do believe it's fair for you to deserve what you work for, what you work for and get and have. Yeah, I see nothing wrong with a world that works that way. If you have the power and you can kill, then why shouldn't you kill? If one enjoys the quality of life and culture provided by their nation in its current state, they should feel obliged to celebrate and advocate for actions that increase its external influence on the regional and or world stage. This reminds me of Avatar and that whole spiel. Uh, Frickin' what's his name? Roku's friend said because he's the one that instigated the 100-Year War. After all, we should share this wealth and prosperity with the other nations. Quoting him, no, because back to my very individualistic worldview, what you see as good may be what the majority considers as good. But just because the majority thinks that way doesn't mean the minority exists and that their opinions of what is good shouldn't be respected. Certain inanimate objects should be treated as sacred. Immoral to disrespect them even when no proper day damage is done and nobody is around to witness it. Like doing comedic poses in front of a war memorial. This reminds me of Logan Paul. And yeah, certain things, logically, scientifically, objectively speaking, there should be no reason you couldn't act freely around it, but there are societal norms, history, and culture that is objectively also important and should be respected. So, yes, an individual who is well intended but could be considered a social misfit, weak, timid, and dull witted should be given the same courtesy and respect as their peers rather than treated as a burden by society. Good intentions are good and all, but if no one is able to benefit or even notice those intentions, then I say there's no point. This might seem out of character for me, it might even come as a surprise, but that is just genuinely what I believe. Even though I'm like super hyper individualist. Wait, uh, yeah, people like those should be a burden. Like, imagine, like I guess a fictional example of this would be like vigilante heroes or vigilante superheroes. I do believe uh, those kinds of people and those kinds of stories uh, are uh, should be expected to be treated as burdens by the government as their work, while helpful, is getting in the way of societal structures. And societal structure is an important part of hyper individuality, in my opinion. In order for one to gain the independence of individuality, society needs to be working properly. so that they can adapt to the rules and follow which they believe they want to follow and not follow which they believe they don't want to follow. That is the price of freedom. We willingly take away some of our freedom, such as the freedom to kill those we hate, so that everyone can have equal rights to being able to do whatever, mostly whatever they want. Mentally sound adults should have the absolute right to do what they want with their own bodies, even when it may be detrimental to public health. Huh? This includes both using hard drugs recreationally as well as refusing vaccination. No. This is just a repeat of one of the questions before. You should always treat yourself right. If you're mentally sound and you decide you wanna have fun with your self-injuring kink, you then I think you should consider going to a mental hospital and getting rechecked because that's definitely not mentally sound. You know, there are to uh always healthy ways to do your primal urges, your kinks, your joys. I think there's a more proper word for it, but I don't know it, so those are the words I'm using. Like, take me for example. I have a guro fetish. That doesn't mean I'm gonna go out and freaking murder all sorts of women and fucking stab their tits because I think that looks hot and sexy. But I will do it in video games instead. There are, I guess, ultimately some things that you can't healthily enjoy, like cigarettes, for example. Murder you can enjoy in the safety of your home and in a video game. But smoking, right now, there really isn't many healthy alternatives to it. Things like even things like masochism and sadism can be healthily enjoyed nowadays. But there are still just some things, such as intoxication, that can't be enjoyed alternatively in a more safe manner, similarly to doing drugs. There are still no healthy and safe ways to enjoy getting high, as far as I'm aware. During peacetime, the government should be prohibited from seizing the personal property of law-abiding citizens for state planning without their consent, even if dues are paid in compensation. I mean, if it's a really good project, then maybe, but otherwise, no. Yeah, I agree with this. Come on, that's just fucking mean. You're trampling on the lawn of one person just because they're being a bit of a mild annoyance. I mean, I know I said I would do that, but preferably I wouldn't ever have to. Just because I'm okay with doing something doesn't mean I will do it. I kill spiders when they're annoying and in the way, but that doesn't mean I like doing it. Democracy where leadership is determined by public election in which every citizen has a right to vote is universally preferable to any method of state governance where leadership is appointed from the top down instead. I don't believe democracy is perfect. I disagree. Democracy is just one method of many. It isn't perfectly correct, and it gets some things wrong, but that doesn't mean something like authoritarianism would be perfect and have no flaws. Everything has their own perks and flaws. There's no such thing as a one shoe fits all solution, especially when it comes to government. It is distasteful for a citizen to publicly question the technical knowledge of scientists, the bravery of those in dangerous lines of work, or the work ethic of manual laborers without themselves having achieved similar feats. I think I disagree. Obviously, there's stupid people like fucking flat earthers and stuff. But it's like what Josh Strife Hayes says. You don't have to play a game or watch a movie in its entirety, and you similarly don't need the knowledge and know-how to make a game or make a movie to be able for you it to be correct and for your opinion to be valid when you make thoughts and critique about such works. Similarly, I think it's the same. If a scientist is just so objectively wrong, or if the military is just doing some really fucked up shit right now, we should have the right to speak up about it. If the current governing system has proven itself to become competent at ensuring the well-being of its citizens, all of its laws should be followed to preserve social stability, including ones that seem arbitrary or that one might disagree with. Since I don't agree with copyright laws, I disagree. Laws are a tool and should be followed where it's necessary, but that's what it is. Laws, religion, and science are all different tools that are good at handling different things for ensuring well being and happiness, but are otherwise bad in other places. Case in point, laws are not very good when it comes to creative freedom. Scientists are not very good when it comes to spiritual well being. And well, I mean, I guess they kind of contradict with laws a lot. Now, I guess a lot of things. I guess both. I guess science just has a lot of enemies and not too much allies. I was trying to make a narrative where law, science, and religion were in like a rock paper scissors dynamic, but nope. It's rock loses to paper and scissors. Or I guess more accurately, I guess more what would make more sense for me to say as a hyperbole is paper loses to both scissors and rocks. Because I mean, rocks can trample paper too. You know, paper beating rock. Who came up with the cycle anyway? Certain activities are so disgusting that they are deeply immoral, even if completely consensual, physically harmless, and done privately. Like incest between two consenting adult twin siblings, both of whom are using proper protection. It's icky, but like I said, I wouldn't do anything about it. I can't do anything about it. And I'm more open to protecting others' beliefs than protecting my own belief. So, disagree, but not strongly, because that would imply I'm perfectly fine with incest, which I'm not. Society is at its most admirable when businesses, schools, and public institutions follow a culture of perfectionism, prioritizing the enforcement of deadlines, punctuality, quality control, and commitment to long term planning, even over more flexible or lax systems. I don't disagree. I don't disagree. But I also don't perfectly agree. I have opinions of it, so I can't answer no opinion either way. So I'll say slightly agree. It is unethical for the government to place restrictions on what ideologies, beliefs, and opinions can and cannot be expressed within social media and academia, no matter how dangerous they might be considered. Think of the worst, most destructive ideology you can imagine, then decide if you want to have it, if you would have it censored. Hmm. What's the most destructive ideology I know? I believe the one that comes to mind right now is a society of people that believes that people should just stop reproducing and just go extinct. I mean, I really just don't like censorship anyway. Uh, I guess there's also fictional beliefs. Like there's Carr's idea of perfection, which ultimately just means they're just existing one feature in the entire world all alone, and the destruction of everyone else just because of their inherent weakness when compared to perfection. Uh, Here we go. Here we go. As an ideology, there's anarchists who believe that laws just shouldn't exist. I mean, this is ultimately just a question of censorship regarding expressing your beliefs. Although I guess express does mean doing it as well. Censoring and doing something about it are two completely different things. You know? If someone wants to practice their destructive ideology and it gets in the way of other people's lives and well-beings, then definitely something should be done about it. It should be considered socially unacceptable for respected high-status authority figures to demand preferential treatment from civil society. Yes, you shouldn't. Don't be privileged, bitch. Like I said, I believe in equality. It is preferable for the public to be aware of a hard truth concerning them and have it result in outrage slash instability than it is for them to be kept under blissful ignorance. I agree. I don't believe in secrets. Secrets and hiding things and lying don't belong anywhere. If the truth would have it that you can never be friends, then that's simply just how it's meant to be, sadly. And you shouldn't keep those secrets just because you really want something that could never work out to work out. And obviously, if something is revealed that would cause outrage and instability, it is the fault of the people for not being able to keep calm and for trying to take advantage of information to do something. Odin is a villain because he tried to to keep all knowledge to himself, but the bigger villain is one that tries to destroy knowledge and prevent its usage from anyone, including themselves. So, yeah, if something bad got out, we should just handle it responsibly and deal with the aftermath as best as we can. Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that. Sure, hold on. I'm doing something right now. Give me a few minutes. Here we go. Here's my results. Just gonna take a picture so I can send it to Toryu. So number one is actually fairness, which is surprising to me. And in group being the least, which again wasn't surprising. Purity is in fact at number three. So care is less important to me. Fairness is more important according to this thing. Building conservative values, individualizing liberal values. So I'm more liberal than conservative. Okay, that I guess that says a lot about the makers of this test, but more than it does me, honestly. And okay, so I said liberty would be because I thought liberty meant freedom and free speech and stuff. But apparently, it's my second least important trait, right next to authority, which I already predicted would be my least important thing. Yeah, I guess I'm not that caring. Like I said, if something is bad, you should be honest and just and you can rightfully tell them what they're doing wrong. I'm a fucking Democrat. I guess that makes a lot of sense. I am I am fairly well educated and literate. And yeah, Toryu scored very highly on that as well. Of course they do. Bunch of idiots that they are. Natalism. Never heard that word before. Yeah. Japan, North Korea, well, all of Korea actually, pretty much, are likely to score highly here. Maybe not on the youth, though. Mostly the old people would value this a lot. Huh. Standard of high society. Yeah, this is the one I understood the least. Avoid behavior that is perceived as contaminating, degenerate, and degrading. Value cleanliness, beauty, etiquette. Yeah, I don't value any of these things too much. So it makes sense that, well, it is the third. One, two, three, four, five, six. Yeah, it's right in the middle. Purity and liberty are mid for me. Yeah, these three are very Eastern, while these are very Western beliefs. So, yeah, So I guess it isn't entirely American. It's a good test, I say. Right, apparently I'm gonna watch Avatar now. The live action Netflix one. Fun.